When you love someone enough, you will be loyal to them, willing to sacrifice your life for them. Yes, I'm talking about Max, the dog, and his unwavering loyalty to his owner, Jack. Before we dive into today's adventure, make sure you're subscribed to our channel so you don't miss any of our gripping stories. And remember, watch until the very end as a surprising twist awaits you. Don't forget to comment your thoughts on Max's loyalty or share a story about your own four-legged friend. The rain had been falling relentlessly, drenching the earth and turning the forest into a maze of mud and shadows. The towering trees, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky, stood like ancient sentinels, unmoving yet ominous. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and every step Jack took was met with the wet squelch of his boots sinking into the soft ground. He should have never come out here, not in this storm, not alone, but he had no choice. Max was out there, somewhere in the darkness, and Jack couldn't leave without him. The golden retriever had bolted into the woods hours ago, chasing after something Jack hadn't seen. At first, he had called out, his voice steady and reassuring, confident that Max would come bounding back like he always did. But the minutes stretched into hours, and the storm grew worse. His calls became frantic, his throat raw from shouting against the relentless downpour. Yet, no familiar bark answered him. Only the howling, long, mournful, and distant, echoed through the trees, sending a chill down his spine. Jack gripped his flashlight tighter, its beam cutting through the darkness in shaky, uneven strokes. The wind howled through the trees, almost as if it were mocking him. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to push forward. He had to find Max. Yet, deep in his gut, something felt off. The forest, alive with rustling leaves and distant echoes, seemed different tonight. It wasn't just the rain or the darkness, it was something else. Something unseen. Watching. Waiting. Jack trudged deeper into the forest, his heart pounding with every step. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, but the cold had seeped into his bones. His clothes were soaked through, clinging to his skin like a second layer of icy discomfort. The air smelled of damp earth and rotting leaves, a scent that only deepened the unsettling feeling gnawing at his gut. He had been searching for hours, yet Max was nowhere to be found. The golden retriever had never run off like this before. At least, not for this long. Something wasn't right. Then, the howl came again. This time, it was closer. Jack froze. His breath hitched as the eerie sound echoed through the trees, stretching unnaturally in the stillness. It was deep, guttural, nothing like Max's familiar bark. A shiver crawled up his spine. He had grown up in these woods. He knew the calls of the animals that lived here. But this was different. Swallowing hard, he forced himself to move. He raised his flashlight and swept the beam over the dense underbrush, searching for any sign of movement. The trees cast twisted shadows, their branches swaying eerily in the wind. He called out again, his voice hoarse from the cold and exhaustion. "Max! Where are you, boy?" Silence. The forest, which had once been filled with the constant noise of rustling leaves and distant chirps, seemed to hold its breath. The quiet was suffocating. Jack had never noticed how loud silence could be until now. Even the rain, which had been falling relentlessly, felt muted. Then, his flashlight flickered. His pulse quickened as he smacked it against his palm, cursing under his breath. When the beam steadied, something glinted in the distance. two glowing eyes, low to the ground. Jack's breath caught in his throat. At first, he wanted to believe it was Max. But as his mind cleared, the realization sank in. The eyes were too far apart, too large. Jack took a slow step back. Whatever was out there, it wasn't his dog, and it was watching him. Jack's breath came in short, uneven gasps as he stared at the glowing eyes in the distance. His heart pounded so hard it echoed in his ears, drowning out the soft patter of rain against the leaves. His fingers tightened around the flashlight, his knuckles white from the grip. The beam trembled in his unsteady hands, casting jittery shadows across the trees. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. Something was wrong. Deeply, horribly wrong. The eyes were too large, too far apart. They didn't blink, didn't shift. They just stared. A heavy silence hung in the air, pressing down on Jack's chest like an unseen force. He swallowed hard, his throat dry despite the rain. His mind scrambled for explanations, but none of them made sense. A deer, maybe? No. These eyes weren't soft or timid. They were fixed on him with a quiet, predatory patience, as if whatever owned them was waiting for him to make a mistake. Jack took a slow, trembling step back. The mud sucked at his boots, making the movement feel sluggish, like a nightmare where you try to run but can't. The moment he moved, the eyes blinked. Once, slow and deliberate. Then, they vanished. Jack's stomach dropped. The underbrush rustled. The sound was faint but deliberate, something shifting just out of sight. His breath hitched as he swung the flashlight toward the noise, but all he saw was a tangled mess of roots and wet leaves. The silence returned, thick and unnatural. It felt as if the entire forest was holding its breath. "Who's there?" Jack's voice came out weaker than he intended, barely more than a whisper. Nothing. And then, a low, guttural growl, so deep it vibrated in his chest. Panic surged through Jack like ice in his veins. He turned on his heel and ran, his boots slipping in the mud, his breath ragged with fear. Behind him, something moved. Heavy, fast, stalking him through the darkness. Jack didn't dare look back. He knew. Whatever was following him wasn't human. And it wasn't alone. Jack ran, his legs burning with each desperate stride through the tangled underbrush. His breath came in ragged gasps, his lungs screaming for air, but he couldn't stop. He wouldn't stop. The mud sucked at his boots, threatening to pull him down with every step. Rain pelted his face, blurring his vision, but he barely noticed. All he could hear was the sound of something heavy crashing through the forest behind him. Something fast, relentless, and far too close. Shadows stretched and lunged at him, feeding the panic clawing at his chest. A thick branch loomed ahead, but before he could duck, it smacked against his shoulder, sending him stumbling sideways. His footing gave way, and he hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind from his lungs. The flashlight flew from his grasp, landing several feet away, its light flickering weakly against the wet earth. Jack tried to push himself up, his palms sinking into the cold mud, but his muscles trembled with exhaustion. His mind screamed at him to move, but his body wouldn't listen. His ears strained against the deafening silence. Then a sound, low, guttural, and too close. Jack forced himself to turn, his pulse hammering against his ribs. In the dim glow of the fallen flashlight, he saw it. A hulking shadow at the edge of the trees, its eyes glowing like embers in the dark. The thing was massive, its body shifting and coiling like mist, yet its presence felt solid, heavy, suffocating. Its breath came in slow, measured huffs, the sound vibrating through Jack's bones. Terror gripped him. He scrambled backward, his fingers clawing at the mud for any kind of leverage. The creature moved, not lunging, not attacking, just stepping forward, deliberate and unhurried, as if it knew he had nowhere to go. Jack's chest tightened. This was it. He was trapped. Then a sharp, furious bark shattered the silence. Jack's heart leapt. Max. Jack barely had time to register what was happening before a blur of golden fur lunged between him and the creature. Maximum. His dog stood firm, soaked and shivering, but unshaken. His teeth were bared, his ears flattened against his head, and a deep, warning growl rumbled from his throat. Jack's breath caught as Max took a step forward, his body tense, fearless, despite the massive shadow looming before them. The creature hesitated. Its glowing eyes narrowed, studying the dog. For the first time since this nightmare had begun, Jack felt something shift, an uncertainty, a pause in the relentless pursuit. Max barked again, loud and sharp, the sound cutting through the suffocating silence. Jack had never heard him sound like that before, so fierce, so unyielding. The growl from the creature deepened, but it no longer surged forward. It seemed wary, as if, somehow, Max was a threat. Jack's pulse pounded in his ears. He wanted to move, wanted to run, but his limbs felt frozen, his mind trapped between terror and disbelief. He watched as the creature shifted, its form flickering, as if struggling to hold its shape. It took a slow step back, then another. The rain, which had seemed so distant in the chaos, pattered gently against the leaves, as if the storm itself had quieted to witness the standoff. And then, just like that, it was gone. The shadow melted into the trees, vanishing as if it had never been there at all. The forest remained eerily still, as if holding its breath, but the crushing presence that had pressed against Jack's chest had lifted. Jack collapsed onto his knees, gasping for air. Max turned to him, his tail wagging slightly, his tongue lolling out as if he hadn't just stared down something unnatural. Jack let out a shaky laugh, his hands gripping Max's damp fur. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice breaking. Max nudged him gently, as if to say, "Of course I did." Jack exhaled deeply. Whatever had been out there was gone, for now. But as he glanced back at the darkened woods, an uneasy thought gnawed at him. It wasn't over. Not yet. Jack sat in the mud, his chest rising and falling in ragged breaths, his fingers tangled in Max's soaked fur. The adrenaline still surged through his veins, leaving him lightheaded, his muscles trembling from exhaustion and fear. He pressed his forehead against Max's damp head, letting the warmth of his dog anchor him back to reality. The storm hadn't stopped, but something in the air felt different now. Lighter, as if the weight that had been pressing down on him had finally lifted. Max gave a small, contented huff and licked Jack's hand as if all was well. Jack let out a weak, breathless chuckle. His dog, his loyal, fearless companion, had saved his life. He ran a shaky hand down Max's back, reassuring himself that he was real, that he was safe. He had to get out of here. Jack pushed himself up, his legs still unsteady, the cold rain dripping from his hair into his eyes. He spotted his flashlight a few feet away, its beam still glowing faintly against the mud. With slow, cautious steps, he picked it up and dusted off the wet grime. The beam flickered, but held steady. Max stayed close, his body pressed protectively against Jack's side as they started walking. Every step felt surreal, as if he were emerging from a nightmare that hadn't quite let him go. The trees loomed around him, their shadows stretching and shifting, but the oppressive, unnatural silence had faded. The forest had come back to life. He could hear the distant chirp of insects, the rustling of leaves in the wind, sounds he hadn't even realized were missing before. Still, he didn't dare look back. As they neared the edge of the forest, the glow of distant streetlights became visible through the thinning trees. Relief swelled in Jack's chest, but it was tinged with something else, something darker. He couldn't shake the feeling that the creature was still watching, hidden deep in the shadows, waiting. Max trotted ahead, his tail wagging, but Jack hesitated, casting one last glance into the darkness behind him. The forest was still, the rain whispering softly against the leaves. But in the silence, Jack swore he could still hear it, that distant, haunting howl. Jack stood at the edge of the forest, his breath still unsteady, his clothes soaked and clinging to his skin. The streetlights ahead cast a dull, comforting glow against the rain, a beacon of safety after the nightmare he had just endured. Max shook himself off beside him, sending droplets flying in every direction, his tail wagging as if they had just returned from a simple walk. Jack wished he could feel the same relief, but something inside him refused to settle. He turned just for a moment to glance back into the trees. The darkness beyond the thinning canopy seemed endless, deeper than it should have been. The creature was gone. He had seen it retreat, but the feeling of being watched still clung to him like a shadow. The memory of those glowing eyes, the way they had studied him, lingered in his mind, refusing to fade. Jack exhaled shakily and forced himself to turn away. Whatever had happened tonight, whatever had been lurking in the hollow, it was over. At least for now. Jack's breath caught in the cool air as he and Max walked away from the shadowy hollows that had nearly swallowed them whole. Each step on the pavement echoed with a chilling reminder of the night's harrowing events, a stark contrast between the mundane safety of civilization and the untamed wilderness lurking at their backs. But as they ventured further into the safety of the known, a distant howl pierced through the patter of the rain, a spectral sound that seemed to bridge the gap between reality and the supernatural. Jack froze, his heart hammering against his ribs, the flashlight in his hand now a cold, small comfort. He listened, straining against the wind that swept the haunting cry away, leaving him to wonder if it was his imagination or a lingering threat. Max, ever the loyal companion, trotted ahead, unaffected, embodying a confidence Jack wished he could feel. With a heavy heart, Jack followed, pushing down the dread that twisted in his stomach. He vowed not to look back. But as the eerie howl faded into the night, Jack knew deep down that this encounter was just the beginning. Whatever mysteries lay hidden in the darkness weren't done with him yet. If you're captivated by the mystery and crave more spine-tingling adventures like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Dive into the unknown with us and explore the shadows where reality and folklore intertwine. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest releases and share your thoughts or your own eerie tales in the comments below. Join us as we chase the mysteries that lurk just out of sight. And remember, The end is only the beginning.